Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. We have Janaka, who's a CTO from Colombo, Raju, who's an architect with Standard Chartered, Venkat, who is a engineering lead from AquaConnect, and Deepak from Microsoft. We were just discussing managing versus influencing, right? And whether we like it or not, uh, different parts of our life.
They manage the information, not really the technology, right? So, and if most of this are run through the programs, still the agile is full stream into the banking environment. It used to be like a program, so everything is completely detailed. Everything, the blueprint has to be available for next 5 years and stuffs like that. Once you start putting that blueprint for a couple of years, right, didn't allow it to evolve, then will automatically become managing. Either it's architecture or either it's portfolio or anything, right? Then it'll become managing. Basically, you already said something. We have to make sure that has to happen. So somehow we are managing the things to adhere to that, right? That's the biggest problem, right? But I believe recently, because of the agile evolution, this keeps changing. This evolution of showing something and getting your early adapters to it as an influencer into that community. So that's changing right now. So I see a lot of changes, not only from an architecture perspective, but everything.
A lot of times we spent around managing it rather than influencing. Now this works for then I realized that this applies for architecture also. So as architects, are we just doing architecture to manage the environment, the ecosystem in which the architecture exists as a technology solution? Or is it actually influencing it? I think a couple of things is easy to understand. Managing is boring, it's monotonous, it's very energy draining, whereas influencing is more fun, interesting, but harder also. So we could just go around and then say, like, in your case, right, if you say what would be the difference between an architecture which manages and an architecture which influences. So Janaka, can you think of some examples where you say, architecture just managed stuff?
Yeah. So, for example, if you look at an organization like, take a bank for example. So, in a banking environment, software architecture or any system architecture is seen as a means to an end. So, they are more interested in. So, there are two aspects to this. I'll first cover the first aspect. So, basic function of a banking solution is basically to empower and improve either top line or the bottom line of the organization. In this
Right.
realm, most of the time we are talking about architecture, we are just managing. Whereas if you look at some architectures that's coming in under all the digital transformation, what you call realm, right? So these are kind of architectures that tend to have that like empowering or influencing capability, where we like to keep on expanding the ecosystem or the architecture. So it's basically influencing the people to think out of the box and also come up with a kind of like a ecosystem where evolution is possible. So basically, management usually leads with results, whereas for me, influencing is a evolution. So that's kind of like my take on that.
Okay. So can you think of instances where you wanted the architecture to influence, but only you could implement something which manages the ecosystem?
So I can give an example where we actually wanted to do because now most banks wants to do digital transformation, the last mile digitization of the customer experience. So there are two ways to achieve this. One is a black box that does it and achieve something, and but at the same time you can build something that evolves. So you start with something not substantial, but you keep on growing it. So basically, you are influencing all the stakeholders to actually go think, what do you call, be dreamers, and then add ideas on top, and then actually build that ecosystem larger. But in most cases, what would happen is if you take in a banking environment where things are more cut and dry, and you say, okay, it's either a capital expenditure or an operational expenditure, then you start looking at the architecture in a different way, right? So the thing is, it's more about how much you invest and how long it's going to stay in our books and what's the incremental revenue out of it, and then how do you get out of it. So what will generally happen is that influence, even though you want to create an ecosystem where you can influence thoughts, influence ideas that can be turned into what you call actual deliverables because of certain how do I say, views or opinions, they will become something like a black box that you deliver once and get it over with. So again, it's just a managed architecture, not influencing architecture. Because the thing is, the guardrails set in place do not allow that influencing aspect, rather than a very strict guideline as to what goes in and how we are going to look at it. So that I have seen that on multiple occasions where we try to develop something that's evolving, and then but the thing is, then others have, especially in the finance domain, they have other views on this.
Okay, so if I understand right, like, just tell me if this is true. So when I'm kind of making an architecture which is there to manage, okay, so it is something like, let's say, I have one of the challenges which we had. We were working for a healthcare, okay, and in the healthcare, they were actually moving from a thick client, DB server in the central, and then VB clients over to a cloud architecture scenario. Now, in that case, what had happened was we were trying to I was with Microsoft at that time. So we were trying, let's try it in the cloud environment, but the challenge was they had different centers in different places. Okay. Now, one thing which I failed there was I couldn't have a influencing architecture. Okay. So basically what that means is kind of related to what you are telling, but a little more specific thing is that I wanted to roll out certain capabilities within a hospital with the new architecture to certain pockets of the audience, and they will become the motivation force for other hospitals and other departments to adopt the new application. Okay, so it's a classical change management thing, right? Because the CTO and CEO were always afraid that people won't adopt it, and obviously as a hospital is running, you have to do this change as the thing is in flight, right? And they can't afford to have mistakes, and because it's healthcare, they were even more worried about its failure. So they were kind of forcing on, let me get the perfect solution out. Okay, so let's get the perfect architecture out. We all know that doesn't exist, but somehow people think it exists somewhere. Now, because of that, what I had to do was I only gave an architecture which got managed. Now, what does that mean? That means that it was a standard 3-phase waterfall project. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Okay. Now, the result of that was, it was planned for it was planned to be go live after 3 quarters. Okay. Guess what? After 5 quarters, nothing had gone live. Right? And the confidence in the dev team, so the dev team was again a mixture of outsourced and internal folks, right? So the CEO and the CAO had lost faith on internal IT. Internal IT had lost faith on the vendors. Okay. And the architecture was more focused on let's manage it. Okay. So you do more testing. Okay. The code we're getting. So some test cases miss within internal testing. You add more of that. But the thing that it could inspire people to roll out across the organization, the architecture failed. Okay, so it was classically an architecture for management, and I as an architect failed miserably over there. Now, if it was an influence thing, I should have been able to get something out. For example, it could be maybe if I had convinced them just to develop this new functionality for a cafeteria. I did try, but I failed. Okay. um, and people see the new interface, new thing, and then they see the cafeteria working well, and probably that would have inspired the pharmacy to adopt it. So even if there were some problems in the application, right, nothing will be perfect. Now when they start looking at, I need to have that perfect software which has to meet an application which has been running for the past 8 years, the new one is never going to meet that gold standard. Okay, and then you will start comparing it and say, this is not ready, this is not ready, this is not ready. That's the catch that they fell into. And the technology, the design, what we did was always trying to manage these internal stakeholders rather than influencing them, and most importantly, the end users. It never reached there. Okay. So my architecture and as an architect, I failed miserably over there. If I could have got one module out, right, just a cafeteria, and shown the new interface, and then influence probably the pharmacy guy or the backend guy, then come to the diagnostics. Then you could have gone to, let's say, patient management, and then to the operation theater. If I could have done, then my architecture itself could have influenced how the development was done, how the end users adopted the change management like that. So my architecture was a pure architecture which managed. It didn't do any influence at all. Correct? It didn't change anybody's mindset. Nothing happened. So it's pretty hard. Any of you can think of instances where the architecture that you did was an absolute perfect manager.
No, I think most of the architectures, I start with the example of banking that Janaka started with, right? If you look at from banking perspective, we used to call it a CAOs basically. It's not really CTOs, right? Because they manage the information, not really the technology, right? So, and if most of this are run through the programs, still the agile is full stream into the banking environment. It used to be like a program. So everything is completely detailed. Everything, the blueprint has to be available for next 5 years and stuffs like that. Once you start putting that blueprint for a couple of years, right, didn't allow it to evolve, then will automatically become managing. Either it's architecture or either it's portfolio or anything, right? Then it'll become managing. Basically, you already said something. We have to make sure that has to happen. So somehow we are managing the things to adhere to that, right? That's the biggest problem, right? But I believe recently, because of the agile evolution, this keeps changing. This evolution of showing something and getting your early adapters to it as an influencer into that community. So that's changing right now. So I see a lot of changes, not only from an architecture perspective, but everything. If you ask me from an exact example, right, 99% of the architectures that's done with the portfolio management, the program management is actually managed. As you rightly said.
It's an interesting thing that you're telling. So it's kind of got to do with how the portfolio and the program itself is defined. And that kind of, it's like straitjacketing. The moment you define a program and a portfolio, you're kind of pretty much done. After that, you just have to manage that PowerPoint which was built by somebody sitting somewhere else. Make sure that your things okay. That's an interesting perspective, right? Deepak?
So this is something which I am trying to understand. One is, why do you really care whether you manage or you influence, right? Okay. That is a question which architects have to answer, right? That why do you really care whether it is managed or whether it is influenced, right? Is it serving some purpose, right? Maybe managed is good enough, right? Like Raja said, 90% of the projects implementations are managed. That means they are serving some purpose. They are giving some output. May not be the best output, but they are serving some purpose, right? Now, from what I understand, you are trying to do is one of these ways better than the other, right? Is managed better or is influenced better? Right. So that is the question we are trying to answer. Now, my sort of approach is, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter whether you manage it or influence it. Right. If it all depends on who is trying to get you to manage it, who is trying to get you to influence it, and then the interaction between what is your objective and what is their objective. Right. Finally, one person has to convince the other. I said, okay, I think your way of managing this project is not going to work. Let me try the influence, and I convince you. And he says, okay, it's a human interaction thing. He says, okay, I agree with your approach because you have convinced me that there is logic in influencing rather than logic in managing. Right now, all these things, what architects have to go back and think is, what you're trying to build, is it a complicated system or is it a complex system? Right. So let me define what is complicated and what is complex. Right. A watch is a complicated system, right? Watch has, I'm talking about a mechanical watch, not the electronic kind, right? So a mechanical watch, you open it, you have so many components in it, all gears, things moving, right? One component goes bad, the watch stops working, right? That is your complicated architecture. So many components, all of them have to work together. They have to always work, right? Now think of nature, right? Nature is a complex system, right? It's a robust system, right? You destroy one tree, the whole ecology does not stop, right? You kill one species of animals also, the whole ecology does not stop, right? It's a robust system which comes back on its own, right? Even a city, right? If you take a city like Chennai or Bangalore, right? There is a lockdown, right? Life still goes on. It's a robust system, right? So what architects need to think about is how you are going to make a robust system by understanding the complexity, right? So now complexity here means, I've just given you an example of complexity, but I've not really defined what complexity means. So you will see complexity when you encounter it. So complexity means you have multiple factors, they influence each other and they adapt to each other, right? Means there are so many participants in that whole system, and they will interact with each other and they may adapt to each other. Like people will figure out how to get milk during a lockdown, right? Somebody will provide those services, delivered at home, right? It's a self-evolving, self-adjusting, self-organizing system, right? So that is what architects need to. I'm not saying they can reach the level of understanding nature and applying it to IT and things like that, but they need to understand that what are they trying to build, right? If they can come closer to building a robust system which adapts to various factors, and people understand it. People understand complexity inherently, right? If you explain to people that, see how cities work, just the way I explained it to you, you immediately got what complexity and complicated are two different things, right? And most business decision makers can also get it very quickly, right? So I would say if architects want to influence, they need to be able to put this in this context to the business decision makers, who are the main influencers of the main people you are trying to influence, right? Or sometimes even technical decision makers, they will understand this, right? We are trying to build a robust system, right? And these are the factors influencing it. So architects need to understand what is complex and what is complicated, right? What is it that I'm trying to influence? Am I trying to build a complicated system or I'm trying to build a complex system? So they need to be able to define that, because to build a complicated system, there can be 10,000 ways to build a complicated system, right? Because there are so many moving parts and all the parts can fit together in different ways. You figure out which is are you trying to influence that, which part goes where, or you're trying to build a robust system?
Now, would that mean, so just one thing, right? So,
can I add a small item to that? And so I think when the discussion is going on, so a couple of items I wanted to add. So I think we need to be clear about what is influencing and what is convincing. Because right now, I think half of like if I look at a typical project scenario, example like what Deepak mentioned, right? So for me, influencing and convincing are extremely different. Like for example, like what Kumaran you just mentioned, right? Was more about not being able to convince somebody of that influencing nature of the architecture as opposed to influencing that person. So for me, and influencing architecture is like you basically you're guiding your stakeholders down a path where they had not seen before. Whereas um, sticking to a project timeline and delivering a project is basically selling your idea, which falls more under the convincing part. It's not influence.
I think I'm not quite clear on that. So, for example, right? Yeah. If the stakeholder has to take a new path, I have to convince him to take that left turn in that unknown road, right?
Absolutely.
So how are they different? I think influence objective is to convince them only. I'm still not getting the difference.
So for me, convincing them on, like for example, convincing somebody to accept your architecture is basically getting your buy-in. Influencing somebody for me is influencing them to start a journey. So basically, when you are influencing somebody, it's not about selling your idea. It's about going on that journey with me.
But isn't that an idea itself? Going out on the journey itself is an idea, right?
No. The thing is that it's beyond the whole thing. Like for example, if I take your example, what you just mentioned, like when you wanted to have that evolving architecture, which was identical to what I sold, because that was exactly my problem. So basically, I wanted to give a solution where it was not time boxed to 6 months, where you are achieving everything under the sun in in 6 months. Instead of that, you take a small MVP, right, and then you deliver that and you build on top of it. So what it would have done was it would have given a platform where I can influence my stakeholders to think of things that they have never thought before. But before I got there, I had to convince them on why I am not going to go down that deliver everything in 3 months kind of solution, which you had to do and which I had to do also. Because the thing is that, okay, you have 3 quarters, deliver everything under the sun under 3 quarters. So that's what I'm saying. So the thing is that convincing on the idea is one thing, and then for me it's different. Like again, if I come to the second point on what Deepak said, I totally agree with that one. So basically, we as architects I always say that when we have a problem or architectural problem or a design problem, I always say, look at people who have solved it before. Because even we have a set of design patterns, architectural design patterns that we follow. But again, nature is a very good example. All other architectural problems we have, nature has already solved it. Like for example, this is an interview question I do without asking anybody whether they know Hadoop and how to work on data. I would just ask them, okay, look, you have 1 hour and you have 10 pages of a newspaper to read, and you can only read 1 page per hour. How do you read 10 pages in 1 hour? So eventually we are going to start with threads and eventually get to Hadoop. But the thing is, the whole idea is that that problem has already been solved by somebody. So basically, I agree with what Deepak is saying. So basically, nature as a complex system. So I also like to build that type of complex systems where things are resilient and fault tolerant. I think it's a little bit off the topic, but anyhow, I just wanted to say I agree with what Deepak said. So again, I also believe in complex systems, not complicated ones.
So I'm just kind of trying to get a concrete example, right? We are just talking concepts here. In your projects, right? What you have worked. I said, this was, and basically two questions, right?
I'll give you an example if you want.
For
a complex system.
Let me just finish the question.
Yeah.
When you say manage and influence, right? Can you manage complexity? To me, in my mind, from what Deepak explained, you can manage complicated systems, but I don't think you can manage complex systems.
No, you don't manage complex systems.
You can only influence them, right?
Yeah.
So if we are agreeing that you can only influence complex system, and you can manage complicated systems. So probably then the first step is kind of identify what I'm dealing with is a complicated system or what I'm going to deal with is a complex, step one. And then after that, it becomes fairly clear that, if I'm dealing with something complex, I can only do influence, I cannot do manage. Okay. So can you think of examples in what you have implemented already, saying that this project or this solution was complicated, but this one was complex?
So I'll give a simple example for something like what we mentioned, complex, right? So
yeah.
Now we have for example, we built one mobile and internet banking platform, which basically is absorbing about services from about 10 to 20 different systems inside the organization, outside the organization. This is not in Sri Lanka, by the way.
Okay.
So it is a complex system because the thing is, basically what the mobile application is just like looking through a spyglass. So basically you see transactions going through you and coming to you, and look at, for example, your portfolio in other entities. So it's a complex system because like Deepak said, that there are so many moving parts, and the way we made it, how we manage that complexity was by making sure that, like what Deepak mentioned, right? So what happens when I can't see the portfolio in my other bank? What would happen? Should I fail, or should I just say, okay, I will go on, but okay, sorry, I don't have that feature for now. So that kind of thing. So the thing is, the way we built it is that, okay, all the features in the ecosystem are allowed to fail, and we expect them to fail also.
So how did what part of your architecture caused an influence? What was the influence element there? I understand this is a complex system. So what was the architecture component which brought in that flavor of influence to the ecosystem?
So basically, the simple word is resilience.
Okay.
So if you make each component resilient in the ecosystem, that was the influential part. That if I went and showed, that was a good example for how we did the influencing architecture. We did one component which was resilient. It was a POC. So we somehow said, okay, we are going to make this, like, we look at the whole ecosystem and took the one that fails all the time, we made that resilient.
Very nice. That's a beautiful example. So basically you kind of said resilience is what I'm going to get. So that will handle the complexity. And for that you picked up a case which was failing, and then you used that as an influencer too. Now it becomes a virtuous feedback, right? This one gives more confidence to the architecture, then it's influencing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the principles we define this as, he says, you design for failure, not design for success, which is resilience, basically, in other words, right? You design that assuming that things will fail, right?
I want it to fail, actually. Yes. Because that's why one of my first tests I do is I just want to pull the plug on like a physical hardware failure.
So the interesting thing in architecture right now, if you look at the different pillars, right, one of the things of the IT environment pillar is actually technical project management. Okay. Now under technical project, it is the architect who chooses which module to do first. We can always do a very simple module to show a POC. But in this case, the key decision, architecture decision, I would say, is picking that component which will fail often.
So that is influence the most.
Which is kind of obvious that it will fail, right? Your current systems has been failing, so you pick that to do it. Now that is a very good example of architecture. What is your most frustrating, complicated architecture that you had to implement? You knew that this is complicated, but you had to do it. We all go through that.
So basically, okay. I had that example.
And the reason I'm asking this question is, right, I think it's very important for us to understand the anti-patterns before we can actually get a good thing going. A lot of us, we don't even know we are stuck in anti-patterns. That's the reason I'm asking this.
So okay, I'll give you an example for complicated architecture. So I had one client, again not in Sri Lanka, where we were supposed to deliver a solution using a third-party tool, third-party software. But the problem was, one side it was predominantly based on Java platform, and this third-party tool doesn't play well with Java. So it's very close to native Windows. And the thing is, okay, but the thing is, when a client has decided I want to use this tool, right? You get into that mix. So then, what do? You build.
Play along with that. You play along with that.
Absolutely.
You know that it's
So
not going to be that clean, but then you play along with it.
So it's like then what you do, you put these nice layers around that unfriendly ecosystem where you somehow manage Windows 32 calls with web services and then somehow expose them to Java layer. So that is not complex, but it's complicated because the things there are so many things that go wrong. It's a very small piece of software. Like if you look at, if I compare with the previous system I built, it was less than 1/10 the complexity, maybe about a couple of 100,000 lines of code. But still, it's so complicated because the thing is, you are basically put in a box where you have to deliver something which is not supposed to be used in a certain way. So you have to deliver it. But then, of course, the effort you put is to hide that complexity around the whole instability, right? Because you have to manage everything gracefully. So that is a good example for me, because the thing is, we are on one side we have a very very stable Java-based system, and then all of a sudden you have some DLLs that are supposed to do some stuff, and then you have to wrap it around and get it to somehow work. But what do you do? Everything again, not complex but complicated.
Yeah, good example. So, Venkat, can you think of something where it was you had to manage it, right? And influence was hard. And as Raja was telling, right, 90% of our projects are just, we treat it as though it's complicated systems, right? Because I think first and foremost, it starts with a RFP, right? Which means there itself you straitjacketed yourself from the word get go, right? The moment you say you have an RFP, we have made it into a complicated system. It is not a complex system anymore. Complex systems should have unknowns. So the moment you say this is the RFP, I want all of you to meet this done, it's done. Before hello, the program is done, right? There is, so I don't think if people, what should I say? It's hard in a case where, in a world where we are work with RFPs on how can you kind of start on a complexity handling or an influence package, right? It's like, it's set, the tone is set, right? You have gotten to a cricket ground. I don't think there is no way you can play ice hockey.
I think it's also depends on the business case also, because in a business case, that means broadly speaking, there are two types of business systems which come up for architecture, right? One is what we call as systems of record, right? These are like, this is for line of business, you have to do it because the business process depends on it. This is non-negotiable sort of a system, right? This is, you have to build it. You have to, this is a business process. You have to, POs have to go, invoices have to happen, core banking has to happen. All those things are systems of record. It's not, means business process is defined. You have to just deliver that, right? So there is very little possibility of influencing in terms of architecture, except for maybe choice of technology or the way you build it, or you let the system evolve. Those are the things you may influence it. But there is another kind of system which we call as systems of innovation, right? Where the organization is trying to innovate, trying to get ahead of the market, or get some sort of critical advantage, right, in the marketplace, right? That is where architects have much more leeway, I would say, to influence, right? Because business themselves do not know. Because when you start talking about systems of record, business already knows what they want. They don't really care about your opinion, right? You can say, no, this business process looks bad. I didn't ask you. Your job is to deliver this system, right? Business process is my domain. This is not your domain, right? Technically, architects can influence that. It says this business process seems to be flawed or whatever, right? That could be one area of influence. But what Raja mentioned, for 90% of the cases, architects have no choice but to deliver on the system of record.
So that means that they are accepting their weakness. I think it's a failure of architecture. Giving up like, oh, business I can't do, then we are not fit to be architects. I would disqualify them as being architects. If you just say, oh, I throw in the towel even before the fight has come in, telling, oh, business won't agree to me, then yeah, okay, it's failed architecture.
That's what I'm saying, that 90% of the cases, architects, it's not that they don't want to do it, they have no choice.
No, they have to build the capability, is what I would kind of think, right? So the good example that you said is, it's actually, that's interesting, right? You said the system of records, okay? So system of records is nothing but, at the end of the day, it is data captured. Now that is no negotiation on that, okay?
Right.
But now if you take something as simple as get me my bank balance, correct? That's the bare minimal transaction that can be done, or withdraw cash, okay? Now to influence this, you need, whether you want to, okay, let's say just getting bank balance, it's a read-only operation. There's no right also involved there, right? There are millions of opportunities to do influence.
I'm sorry, but in banks there is always right operation.
There is always a... Oh, okay. Okay. So let's assume there's a log. Okay, good point. So let's say, so in fact, that very nice, right? Now, what you just said kind of says that even the simplest of a thing can have a complexity nature to it. When did that guy ask for the bank statement? Why is that required? Maybe in another bank case, it is needed. So even what looks like complicated is actually hidden complexity is there in that. So something as simple as what we think as complicated. Here I made the mistake, right? I took one simple use case and I thought it was complicated. But you just pointed out, even that simple use case is actually complex. Now, if you double click on that, right? Why do you need a log that somebody asked for a bank account, right? Maybe there's a legal complaints associated with that. Now, the legal complaints is for something else. This is to influence something else, right? So I'm kind of, I don't know, is there anything which we can say, oh, this doesn't need innovation? I think architects have to kind of say, you know what, majority of the touch points is candidate suitable.
I did not say that there is no scope for innovation. I said architects do not have a choice, right? So when they are, so like RFP is a straight jacket. It's a straight jacket which they are.
Okay. So probably what I was telling is I would just tweak whatever you said a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Architects today feel and accept that they don't have any choice. So probably. I think they should empower themselves to say.
No, but no, hold on. I disagree with that. Architects have the influencing power or the convincing power. So if you say that you cannot, because business is the one who is governing this, you have already, like what you previously said, you should not be an architect. An architect is a person who will sell somebody. People can't see, people can't feel, people they don't know what's going to happen, but still you sell an idea. So that's what we do.
I think, okay, so that's a good point. So I think basically what Deepak just kind of let me understand. What you're trying to say is, typically the mindset is, you know what, I'm a technical architect. I will have to do what the business does. Okay, I don't have power. I am powerless. I am helpless. I'm one poor guy who I have to do that. Okay, so that is a current existing state. Obviously, it's not a desired state, but that is so you kind of tend to go inside the management. You just manage architecture.
I'm saying that is a cause. That is a root cause.
Yeah. I think that's probably. I think we also need, if we kind of start understanding the difference between, you know what, as an architect, am I going to manage or and influence, right? And we kind of, there is this general notion, right? Nobody wants to be a manager, right? You want to be a strategic person, or you want to be an influencer, right? If somebody says, do you want to be a manager or an influencer, right? Very few people in the room will put up their hands and say, you know, I just want to be a manager. Because that the word management itself doesn't have innovation or something creativity attached with it. It's a general opinion, not that you can be a manager who innovates. I'm not telling that the word by itself makes you non-innovative or things like that, right? So Venkat, in your scenario, right, it's small. Okay.
Yeah.
So in your case, it's just a small team, startup. You've been with them for a long time. I'm sure you're being pushed into managing things, right? What, in your case, what causes that? Because your ecosystem is a little smaller, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, so here, like as you said, so like most of the things, like when it wasn't very simple, then it is very difficult to influence, right? So what architects generally what they do is, like when it was a very simple, they'll make little complicated so that, you know, like it looks like we need to do it in a way that it can be it cannot be done it very easily. So what I mean is that when you are preparing the architecture, then you need to include all the components so that it looks like little complex. Then only you can convince the other people. Okay, so it needs to be done in such a way that it should be very complex, so that we can have this much time and this much resources. No, we'll make it little complex, right? Like most of the times. So
okay.
So
because of that,
yeah. So because of that only, we are unable to influence the team.
okay,
Right. So you need to make it just a to-do list. Okay, do this, this way we can influence the people, and we can motivate them so that it can be completed very easily.
so in a way, what you're kind of trying to say is, right. So initially, one of the things about influence is it's a kind of interesting paradox. If I kind of read it, right, to do something changing, we have to keep it simple. But if you keep it simple, the architects will not be respected. So you want to make it complicated, or you want to make it complicated to say there are a lot of things, and I know exactly how to handle it, right? Because you want to come across as the person who knows stuff. So even if by chance the business or somebody gave you a free ticket, we will go through the free ticket and straitjacket ourselves.
Yeah, so
that's an interesting point, right?
It happens all the time.
A self goal.
Yeah.
You do a self goal on yourself.
This is preserving your job scenario, right?
Yeah, and it also has another aspect to it, right? Because the thing is that if you give an inch, you give away a foot also. No, so next time round, another feature comes. The question is, you did that in 2 weeks. No, why do you need 3 months for this one? This is as simple as the other one. So when the business will start doing the architect's job, so it's always better to. Not that I condone that. I usually don't do that. I also like to keep things as simple as possible, because something I live by is every line of code is an opportunity for you to put a bug in. So the least lines of code you write, the least amount of bugs you can generate also. So because of that, I also like.
It's a paradox. It's a paradox.
Exactly.
At one place you want to prove that architecture is adding value. At the other side, you want to say it is simple and you can do it easily. So if it is so simple, why does it require so much time, right? So that is the that is a paradox here. So as much as architects want to simplify stuff, they need to preserve themselves for doing the next job. So that is I do not know. Means there is no answer to that problem. because if you make it simple and all the time your job is to make things simple, and you're saying you're reducing work and nobody will hire you anymore. It says, okay, this guy never adds any more people or adds any more budget or adds any more
If
stuff.
it's so easy, why have him there? We will
Exactly.
replace
He's
somebody.
just doing the stuff.
I'll give a simple example around this. Something that happened in the recent past. We had a customer who had this mechanism of generating tokens for their customers, right? So each time you come, you generate a token for work. All of a sudden, they came and said, by the way, you guys are generating numbers. We want to make it alphanumeric. Okay. And okay, then I didn't get involved in this discussion. So of course, my guys below had implemented this and very happily coming and saying, Janaka, we implemented that and it's working fine. And I said, okay, can I see the code? I looked at it and I see like 2,000 lines of code written around converting a number that you usually will generate as 123 into A13. And you have what, I can't remember. There were 26 nested for loops. And so it's, you need about 5 screens to look at the whole damn thing in one go. Okay. So that simple question I had was, why is it so complex? So no, this is how it is. This works. I said, but why is it so complex? Why isn't there a simple solution? I said, no, this is the way. Like from Mandalorian. And I said, look, what they're asking you to do is you have something decimal, which is base 10, to be converted into base 36, which is alpha and 10. And there are millions and millions of algorithms that convert a base 10 into base 36 out of the box with a single line. So our guys went and wrote that code where I said, okay, if A is this, then you iterate through Y and then come up with numbers. If it jumps to the other side, then you have to offset.
Why did they write? They didn't know that something like this existed. Is that the reason?
So the thing is, it's the way the RFP was written. They had the customer had written the RFP doing they had written the algorithm. That's it. Okay,
it was there in the RFP, is it?
Yeah. So how the numbering system should look like? They said after 9, it should go to 0 and the next digit should be 1. If it's 9, it should be A, and after 9, it should be A on this side, and then it has to keep on jumping. It's like shifting, right? And then because
so basically what happened is, I think that's an interesting thing, right? I think this is how it manifests. It's actually, so basically the RFP had an algorithm. They had kind of, they told it from a business sense, right? They had told it. So these people read it, okay? And they implemented it word for word with code, telling, we have met all the line items in the RFP. Okay. Now, if they had taken the path of, let me use a library or let me use a function which can achieve the same thing, right? The net of the RFP will be achieved, but it will be with a function and you don't need to do all these 10 things that you're asking. You don't have to go through all these points to reach there. I have a flight, you take that flight, it will reach you there. You don't have to go through the intermediate cities. So classically what was done was the RFP was managed, or the ecosystem was managed rather than influenced. So basically they lost an opportunity of influencing. Would I be correct in my understanding?
Yeah.
But they had no choice. That's what it's a no choice scenario, because you have to deliver on that RFP.
Yeah. So it's a mindset challenge, correct? But I think we need to get over.
Let us play this out. What could they have done differently? It means if they were not, the RFP is there, they have to deliver on the RFP. What could they have done? If you were to advise them, what would you advise them to do actually?
I think Janaka just told that, right? It's something.
No. He gave a technical example. I'm saying in your influence.
No. It was not a technical. It was not a technical, because it's now there is a business problem where they want to achieve something, and then and there is a solution that has already been there. Because the thing is, again, I personally think that mathematics is a part of nature. Right. So because And again, it has already been solved. The thing is, what the customer wanted to achieve, when I read the first 10 lines of the RFP, I didn't have to look at the algorithm. I said, okay, look, what they wanted to achieve was to compress this number of digits. And in order for you to compress the digits, what you do is you increase the base. So that's written between the lines. So that was the business problem they were trying to solve.
That is what they did, basic computer science, right? You go to hexadecimal or...
Absolutely. Right? So no, anything you do is like, for example, a very simple scenario is this right now. For example, in the US, each of the states have their own plate. So like, for example, it's not like TN in Tamil Nadu. So it's like the state has a different color or whatever, some notification, and then the same number can appear in two states. So that is given. Like for example, in India, you have TN for Tamil Nadu, so something I have picked up. But if you go to France, they have used something even more interesting. Instead of for you to understand where the car is coming from, what they have are 2 digits which will translate into a city which they have encoded. So instead of, because there are so many cities, they have compressed it. So again, that's the nature of solving the problem, right? Again, this is all about how you approach the problem. That, like you said, this is the difference between managing and influencing. The moment I said, can't you guys do it like this? Immediately the guys went and said, okay, Janaka, now it's good. So they changed it. So, and then
we kind of at times, so kind of key takeaways, right? We could go around the table. I think one thing it kind of became clear as things is, one, management or influence, right? Whether we want an architecture which manages or influence is a choice the architect has to make. By default, architects kind of think in their mind, I don't have a choice, and we just manage architecture. Okay, so that's with practice and a mindset change, it's an architect has to do that switch. I think that is the key thing which I would say, unless that step is crossed, it's hard to get to the next one. What would be your key takeaway from our discussion, Deepak? Thank you, Janak.
I mean, so I actually means I never thought about managing or influencing. I always thought in terms of problem solving, right? And probably I never thought of it in that direction, because problem solving can be managed or problem solving can be influenced. I never thought of it in that way. So it was a good insight for me to think about it in this way, that because, and being straightjacket, all these are things which influence the problem solving, right? How you solve a problem, how you look at a problem, that I need to sort of think more about. So that was my takeaway, that should I, because as engineers, that's what we do. We are problem solvers, right? And when somebody shows us a problem, he says, let us solve it, right? We are not consciously thinking about, should I influence it? Should I manage it? Should I follow this approach, that approach? All those things are definitions which we put on after we have solved the problem. Right? So that's, but maybe there's a better way. That's what I'm trying to think of. Maybe there is a better way to sort of short circuit that whole, because we just go and bang at the problem, right? So we don't always sort of systematically think about it. So that systematic thinking about it and applying sort of your experience behind it. See, that's where some of the experience also applies. You see, that's why they want experienced architect, because they've seen a lot of stuff, right? Experience is not about that they can influence or they can manage or whatever. They have seen a lot of this stuff and they know, okay, this approximately looks like what I did 10 years ago. Right, so that's where the wisdom, quote unquote, comes from, right? Because they failed so many times, they know, okay, this doesn't work, right? So that's their sort of thing, and maybe there's a better way. I'm just saying, experience sort of is the hard knock way of doing the same thing. It says you figure out as, okay, maybe I can handle this by influencing, because maybe I'm not consciously doing it, because I know from past experience that doesn't work. Right? Or if I try to manage this kind of a problem, it doesn't work. So I guess what we're trying to do is we're trying to define something which happens by experience, But maybe for the people who are getting into it, they can gain from it and say, okay, I don't really have to spend 10 years to learn this. I can understand the difference between influencing and managing, and I can sort of preempt those things which people have to spend 10 years learning.
Yeah. Janaka, yours?
Yeah. So basically, I think all junior architects that start first, I think the first goal is somehow to manage the architecture. So it's about achieving the goal. So as you grow with more experience, you kind of get that feeling that it's not about delivering the solution, but how you sell your idea, how you influence the idea you have, and then what kind of an influencer you become. Because to be very honest, I also didn't think about it until you told me. But deep down inside, it's all about the way an architect thinks, or what an architect likes to see is that when his idea is influential. So basically, I think that's something we get with experience. So the thing is like, if you take any senior architect, it's not about delivering the product. It's about doing something in a controversial manner. And also,
correct. That's a good way of
I'll give a
putting it,
simple example. Now, last week, now we are starting a big project at our place. And then these guys are saying, oh, we are going to do React and all that stuff. I said, okay, you guys know React? I said, yeah, we are very good at React. I said, fine, then what do you think about Flutter? We don't know it. Then why not try it? Because the thing is, I said, I want you to stick to the same timeline. We'll learn it and do it because you already know a technology, right? Because the thing is, you will have to, the thing is, it's like, that's where we get our, energy from, by doing something that we know is outside of our comfort zone. And that's a self-confirmation, self-actualization for us, and then also lets us influence. And of course, as architects, even though we are experienced, we also have to think about going from that influencing to the managed part, especially when the project is going south. The more, as it goes, south, you will notice that you are less and less interested in influencing rather than managing.
Sure, correct.
So that's I think, even though we are driven by that whole wanting to influence at every level, on a practical scenario,
I think that's a good way of putting it. I think probably it's something like, when something serious happens, you take somebody to an ICU, but you don't keep them for life in ICU, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's like when a project is critical, then you manage it. Otherwise, you do influence. So it's like, it has its pluses, right? You would need to manage. When it is critical, manage it. But keep an objective that, I'm not going to keep that guy forever in the ICU. I have to take him out and put them walk on the road outside. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Think it?
Yeah. I totally agree with Janaka and Deepak. And sometimes like sometimes we don't know when we are doing it, whether we are influencing or managing it. So there is a thin line between in influencing and managing it, right? So we thought that we are influencing it, but indirectly we may be managing it. For it depends on as like Janaka said, it comes from the experience. So when you are deadline is there, like that time. So in the halfway, that whether it is in going south or right directions. That time you are trying to indirectly managing it instead of before going to the critical stage. If it's a critical stage, you have to be managed like there is no other way, right? And through the experience only, there is each problem will have a different solutions. Whether it is shorter solutions or it is a longer solution, it also comes from the experience where architects should influence, and we can show them some path instead of showing the solutions. So, in that example, so from the RFE, we could show the path, use some algorithm instead of implementing the algorithm, right? So, as from the past experience. So it happens a lot to our company also. Like in our team, like when someone has solved the problem, they took the 2 days to solve the problem. If I would have seen the problem prior to that in the day one, I should have told them, don't go this way, do this way, so that you can complete in half an hour instead of 2 days. We should have no influence them if we have no constantly monitoring. But again, if you are monitoring again, it
becomes
I don't know whether it is managing or influencing it. So,
Yeah, so that's a good. It's a tricky thing, right? I think it's like what there's a paradox built in, right? If you kind of look at very closely to influence, then it becomes managing, right?
Managing, yeah, exactly.
I think that's a different topic altogether, right? It again goes back to what Deepak said, right? The ability to fail. So influence has a built into it. If you want to build influence, then we should be willing to fail, right? If you don't want to fail, you cannot be an influencer. You will just be a manager, right? So
Definitely.
Okay. I think thanks all for joining. I'll stop the recording. I think